So we'd usually start our walk in the Vivian Quarry itself and give a little bit of information about the geology.
Okay. Yeah, so geology, the sort of the way that the rocks formed, and then why they dug down as well as that.
Due to the rockfall, it's closed at the moment, but I'm not sure what the long-term plan is. Hopefully,
I would imagine they're going to be working to
reopen it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, the very first thing is we start at the museum and we show, just kind of ask them to look at the Vivian Quarry, and we ask the young people, what percentage of the quarry do you think you're looking at? None of them ever guess correctly, because the correct answer is about 1%. When you kind of, and then they get to see the scale of it. So we talk a bit about kind of the order in which the quarry developed as well, and the fact that the Vivian Quarry was not one of the first ones to be opened. And also, it's said that the Vivian Quarry had the best quality stone, isn't it?
And you can have a good view when we go up of the Poncia, we say in Welsh, which is the galleries or the terraces in which the quarry worked. So we would usually say again, as Laurie reference to the the percentage. There's about maybe how many Poncia galleries? Maybe 5, 6 here. But in the whole quarry itself, there's over 50.
So is the Heritage Walkers scheme happening in several places around Wales? Sort of, what's the rollout going to be?
That's the big idea. So what this is, first of all, is for a proof of concept. And we thought we'll start here because of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And also because of connections with National Museum Wales anyway.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the feedback for the R&D will be good.
Yeah.
And we can get the proof of concept and see how the projections work and stuff as well. And then get funding.
So is it going to be an app, or is it going to be more about kind of different points that you scan? How do you sort of...
Yeah, so this is the thing, I'm geolocated hopefully, if the beacons are enough to do this. So the R&D is a multi-purpose R&D, so it's to see if people want it, hence the surveys. It's also to see if the idea of the tech, because what we wanted to do is it'd be like an in-phone projections. So there's maybe projections that people can be up close to some of the slate, and they can see quarrymen on the slate, that kind of thing, as opposed to it being like a AR or AV in your phone. So instead of the kind of augmented reality, it's coming out of the phone onto the actual thing.
Wow, I didn't know that was possible.
Well, that technology is not actually created yet. But what we're going to do is, that's why we've got the funding for Innovation Fund, is to see, how far are we from that, and do the projections work. So I've got a mini projector with me, and then tomorrow I'm going to do this again and see how it works with some footage, really. So it'll be like, if you can imagine, like an app, and you sign up to become a Heritage Walker. You got your free version. And your premium version and all this kind of things, depending on the levels of walks you want to go to, and it's slightly gamified as well. Then it's geolocated. You get a bing when you pass the spot that's got some heritage information, and a projection will come up, and you can go with it. anywhere of it, like the saws, the next generation.
There's lots of archive footage on things like Pathé and BFI players.
Okay.
I can send you different
That'd be
films,
good.
but obviously there's costs involved.
Yeah, that's that. We could probably
in
cover
that,
those in the budget.
Yeah, there's lovely footage which explains it a lot better.
That might be quite nice to do, like with projecting it into there when it's the hand one, and then with the dates, just have the dates on it, and then it's later regressions. Just a video.
Well, you know, one of the most kind of popular and accessible routes into the quarry is up at Allt above Dinorwig and Diniolen, and you do have one of the first things you come to there is a huge slate mill.
Wow.
It's completely empty now and the roof has come off it, but you get a sense of the scale there. Obviously very high up in the quarry, but it's not accessible and we don't encourage people to go there. There is an abandoned slate mill which has all the tables, bar one, which is still in the museum.
But as Laurie said, the first shed you come to from Allt just had some interpretation put in as part of the Lle World Heritage nomination bid. So it's part of, it's got a history point, you know, the QR codes there as well. So if you search
the QR codes,
that'll come up as well.
Cool.
What else do we say?
Well, with the bargain as well, we talked about how they were paid.
Oh yes, that's right, because we were saying that bargain means more than one thing. It's the name, of course, of the team, but also the bargain is also a section of rock, approximately 6 feet square, and they would bargain with the quarry steward in terms of how much they would be paid for the slates which they made in the bargain. They would also be paid for the rubble as well, obviously a much smaller amount. So it was a huge part of the slate quarrying process was this bargaining with the steward in terms of how much they would be paid for the month. Obviously they would say, oh, it's very bad rock and we need a higher price, and the steward would say, oh no, it's good rock, you know, it's all part of the process of quarrying. And many of the things like the Great Penrhyn strike, you know, the longest industrial disputes in Britain, one of the main reasons for the strike was a breakdown in this old system of the bargain, because the Penrhyn quarry brought in contractors to act as middlemen in the way, and the quarrymen strongly disliked this because there was a great sense of independence when you worked in the bargain. It felt like, you know, it was part of your family history in a way.
Yeah, gosh.
And they were paid collectively as a bargain as well, so if you had a very bad rockman in your team, well, there was a sense of sort of collective responsibility, wasn't there? And what you'd find is that because often family members would be working the bargain, you'd have the oldest family member and the most experienced and perhaps the most frail would be in the gwalia, splitting and dressing, whereas the younger, stronger men would be rockmen, and then you'd have the sort of 15, 16-year-old apprentices would be on the rubble. Rubble back then. But there's a long, you know, there was a sense of the craft being passed down as well. We've got examples of slate fans in the museum, and when you started as a rebellor, you would be trained up by your bargain, and you'd have to learn to split to certain thicknesses, and it's really interesting because obviously it's industrial and it's a very working class industry, but the level of skill and the level of knowledge that was sort of passed down is immense.
It's a massive culture then.
And also, you know, if you're thinking about projecting in terms of the splitting and dressing into roofing slates, our foreman in his demonstration will mention to you that all the roofing sizes have different names. Names according to, they were ladies, countesses, duchesses, narrow ladies, broad ladies. It was all sort of female nobility names, and it was a system devised in Penrhyn Quarry in Bethesda, and then all the other quarries followed suit and using the same names. But it's quite people seem to be quite interested.
It's quite that is quite fascinating. Yeah.
So why female nobility names particularly?
Just because
I feel like it was some kind of weird joke of, not even a joke, the idea that, you know, treat women with respect, or you're creating these women. I think it's some kind of like macho joke humour.
That's interesting.
So the other place, because obviously this is an entirely male industry, the other place where you do see or hear women's names is in the gallery names. So quite a few of the ponciau up in the Dinorwig part of the quarry are called named after members of the Ashton Smith family. So the Ashton Smith family were the quarry owners. So there's Ponc Enid, Ponc Matilda, which was named on the day that Ashton Smith got married. Then other Ponc names, you've got Wembley because it opened in the same year as Wembley Stadium, Abyssinia, Egypt. They tend to be related to different historical events or people who worked in the quarry.
And also some sort of nice local names like
Cinquali
and Llangristiolis and things after quarrymen who started working at that Ponc, who came from Anglesey at the village, Llangristiolis in Anglesey, that kind of thing.
Well, there's a Ponc called Lernion, and it's very random that I know where this name comes from. Lernion is a farm in Trefor, and Trefor is a village known for granite quarrying. Lernion is the first place my mum lived, so the farm used to be rented by my family, not in the time of the quarry, but we assume that it was granite workers from Trefor coming over.
There's so much, there's so much stories and history.
And with projection as well, up in Asti, having some kind of projection where you can see the names of the Ponciau on the Ponciau would be incredible in terms of keeping those names alive.
Because there's literally nothing there in terms of interpretation until we've got these two interpretation boards and these QR codes, but it's still, it's a start, but there's so much more scope. Because it's very, very popular with walkers as well. Obviously, it's much further, in terms of your project, in terms of families with younger children. This is.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting tomorrow when I bring up this little mini portable projector and see actually how far, in terms of the resolution we can get in the sun, like finding little areas that are a bit darker, and how do we do this? That's going to be quite interesting, I think, tomorrow when I do that.
At least you've chosen when it's the sunniest.
Yeah, this is the sunniest it's going to get. For you.
If it works now, it's going to work in the depths of winter.
Probably works very well in that.
So you can see there's more steps up to all the different galleries, but
it's high, isn't it?
This way now, and you can see.
So this is the tunnel with the bats, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the doorway. So as I was saying, if you can imagine, there used to be up in the Norway quarry itself locomotives, but this would be more. This is where the wagons would come out of the Vivian quarry here. It's locked at the moment because of bats, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
conservation.
Oh, okay.
And then this building on the right here, this would have been the cabban for this part of the quarry. Now we've got a cabban in the museum itself, which is original to the Gilfach workshops. So it was basically like a quarryman's lunchtime canteen, but it was much more important than that because it was the cultural heart of the quarry. So it was at lunchtime in the cabban that the quarrymen would kind of discuss all the key issues of the day, and they would each cabban had its own llywydd, which is
president.
Welsh for president, and he would be responsible for leading on different debates. So they debate different subjects such as, trade unionism, politics. On a Monday they would probably discuss the sermons which have been in the chapels on the Sunday before, that kind of thing. And, being chosen as a Llywydd, the president, was a massive honour because it meant that the quarrymen greatly respected your views. And it was in the cabban as well that they also would collect the money that the men would pay into the union. So they had their own union, the North Wales Quarrymen's Union, which was established in 1874. It's very, very important in terms of, the strike in Penrhyn and also strike here in Norwich. So that's, there's so much scope.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got a lot of interesting things to do with kind of hierarchy and sort of the idea of socialising of young men as well. So there was a hierarchical order to how they would sit in the cabban. The oldest men would sit nearest to the fire, the youngest apprentices would sit near the door in the draft. But also there was a sense that, you were representing your cabban when you were out and about. So you had these kind of quite wild young men. They would be taken to task by the older members of the cabban. But it was a lot of fun. We've got a lot of oral histories of kind of pranks they used to play on each other. They always seem to involve eggs. And like hard boiling
eggs.
And nailing cups and tables and stuff.
Eggs and nails.
Yeah. And I also feel like everybody who's got like a quarryman in the family history has a similar
Same story, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I have to come a bit closer to you guguys when you're talking. Lose your voices. cool.
Yeah, so then we'd talk about the V2 incline, wouldn't we? So you've got two extremes here, really. We're looking up at the... Would we call that the V3? Yeah. So we're looking up at the V3 winding house. And you can see just from the bottom here just how steep this incline is. This is the incline as nature intended. We've got kind of buddleia, and the wire rope, which would have pulled the wagons, is obviously very frayed, and the tracks and everything have either been removed or looted, I'm not sure. But here, and you can see it a bit better if you come around the side as well, the V2 incline was restored with a National Lottery grant in 1999, Caddy?
99, yeah.
99, yeah. So this would have been a gravity incline, but since it was restored, it runs with electricity. And you can see on the drum, so as one rope unwinds, the other winds up, and it's the same principle of gravity, but minute.
But it's, as Oli said, it's different because it's what's known as a tank incline, because it's so steep. We can see it better when we go down the bottom. The wagons don't travel directly on the railway.
Oh, I see.
On the rails. On this one, they travel on a traveller, which we'll see from the bottom. You can see.
It's like a wedge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the brickman would have been responsible for the incline, so he'd sit in the hut and would basically brake. And this was the kind of job often an older quarryman might be given. Likewise in the capan, an older quarryman might be sort of the capan steward, and he'd just be in charge of keeping the hot water and the fire going all day, because the quarryman didn't really retire.
Or if they were injured or something, they might have, that kind of to do just, but we can talk about injury when we get to the hospital.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
as Laurie said, it's difficult because there's specific spots where you can talk about everything in the same spots, really.
Yeah.
And I think also this is a really cool thing to look at in terms of this is all quarry waste, this has all been built by hand, and that's actually something we'll talk about later, how wasteful slate quarrying is, and just a fact that always blows my mind that Gareth Roberts from Menterbach says, any piece of slate you see anywhere around you, a man has touched it at some point.
Oh, that's wild. I'm meeting him this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the part we've had to take out of schools now. As you can see, it's perfectly right, it's not dangerous, but
with schools.
you only need one overexcited 9-year-old to go over the edge. And,
that'd be my granddaughter. She'd be over there in a second. Yeah.
So you can see it's the old tramway, to move the wagons.
Very Indiana Jones, isn't it? Even like in these little bits here, it'd be lovely to project some things into these. I
mean, you could talk about the, geology and things.
And sort of biodiversity and the lichens and different, and kind of how all these shrubs and trees and weeds can just thrive despite the kind of lack of soil, basically.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And sometimes, and Gareth can tell you more about this, you can see some of the geology in different bits. So if we could go down into the quarry, which we weren't able to today, there's a large section that juts out into the pool, and that's just granite, because obviously granite was no good for them, so they'd have to...
Right.
You can see the train coming back.
Yeah. I'm going to do that tomorrow, I think, the little train.
And like being on the train, although as I said it's been re-gauged obviously to a narrow gauge now, and the tourist attraction, but to think that they have their own railways to transport the slate, to their own ports and their own ships, to export all over the world.
It's that whole link there as well. It's nice.
Yeah. And a lot of the sort of local infrastructure we take for granted now was sort of in its initial stages because of the slate industry.
Which you just don't even think about, do you? Like, you kind of go, oh yeah, that whole industrial revolution thing, you kind of think is slightly...
Like loads of our cycle tracks now are based on old quarry railways.
It's fascinating. So some of the stories we've got are things like I say, these myths and legends, which will intermix with the other narratives. So this third choice of a mix, which might have like, I don't know, some fairies in the woods and stuff like that, you know. And then talking about the quarry.
Fel ti'n neud am gyda dy gwylod gynta wedyn.
Warehouse open fan
hyn.
My route does depend on how long we've taken to get to this bit.
Yeah.
They don't always get to see the way. Sometimes I'm like, no, we've got to go now. Especially when it's like heat of summer and sometimes you're doing 3 back to back and you've got like 40 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And they're always late to life. You're like, oh, I've now got 30 minutes to do this.
That is, I think, just a general for every museum, isn't it? Schools are always late to arrive.
This is something you will get.
Is that what your role is going to be? Is it learning and access?
Yeah, so I've been appointed in learning and events manager. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
this is my role. You can see, yeah.
Amazing.
Have you smelt the habit before?
I have, yeah. Lovely.
You know what? She is that in English. I learned this recently. Wimberries.
Ah. Maybe build anything.
Yeah, I kind of got an email too for you.
Wimberries might be another word for the same thing.
So the road that way just leads you up to the hospital, but we'll go round this way because there's a little feature
Okay, cool.
here as well.
It's quite good doing this with someone else because you remind me of stuff I've forgotten about and I can check.
I haven't done it for about 8 years, I'm sure.
But it is because all of us do the walks differently. So yeah, you will at some point be doing this walk.
I look forward to it.
So this would be a weighing hut and a weigh bridge. So at this point we would usually discuss the fact how wasteful in a way the process of slate quarrying is. So for every around 10%, only about 10% of the slates which is quarried is good enough to be turned into roofing slate. So about 90% of all the slate which is removed from the rock face is waste slate. But the quarryman would be paid for that, but it's just at a much smaller amount. But the waste slate, as Laurie said, is so important because that's what shaped everything we can see around us here. So the car park, where you parked your car, that's all been created out of waste slate. Originally the lake was...
Yeah, we've got a picture of the Clwstwr workshops being built in 1870, and as that's you honestly see the lake is, I would say,
just there,
sort of 5-6 feet away from the corner. And if you imagine how much further that is now,
Wow.
so, you know, Llanberris is quite a big lake.
Yeah.
It used to be a lot bigger.
Wow.
So much slate was tipped into it. It's changed the shape of it.
And then it's an opportunity to say, well, nowadays, you know, slate waste is an important, important to the economy. And obviously, isn't it, sort of gardening products, and the quarrymen would discuss the fact that they use slate dust in makeup and that kind of thing as well.
Toothpaste, anything that has silica as an ingredient in, that's just ground up slate dust.
Ah, silica.
So stuff like face powder, toothpaste, and anything where you want to sort of thicken it a bit, isn't it? Or grit.
Does that cause a lot of health issues in itself for people, for women?
So
especially?
breathing it in does.
Yeah.
So silicosis is obviously a huge, and silicosis became more of an issue as the slate industry modernised, because they went from being in the well-ventilated gwalia to then being in the slate mills, which obviously when you're sort of cutting through slate at high speed generates a lot more clothes, and likewise, you know, drills, air compressors and stuff
generated the dust. And although they used kind of water to suppress it, it was still, they used to say, you know, the mill what he was talking about up in Ashby, when you opened the door you almost couldn't see your hand, let alone the other side, because of the concentration. Then that leads you on nicely then to the quarry hospital here.
Cool.
So we'll talk about a bit about the health of the quarry then. Yeah.
And then as you look around, you can see, you know, everything here is built out of waste.
Of the
clay.
waste.
That's a huge mound of waste.
Which is
slate
just
there.
incredible.
And then, you know, interestingly, nowadays in the industry, they've actually turned into crushing the waste slates because that makes the money. So some quarries have reopened just to crush the
Yeah,
slate.
quarry
And
aggregate.
This one
and
is brown.
Ron, yeah.
Look at that view, sorry.
Yeah, you can see it better from when you just go up the steps to the hospital. you can-
Fantastic.
And that's, you know, the spots where you can see all the history. So you can see Gofadar Castle there. You see it's in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the old
Great.
the castle of the Welsh princes, Llywelyn Fawr. So it's dated from the 1200s.
Yeah, we did. There's a little bit of that in the script actually. So
Yeah.
I was thinking it'd be good to put that in there.
You can see it
And so
better from...
Snowdon then, is it just basically the...
Yeah, you can just about see it here. So can you see the sort of reddy haze bowl shaped? Right in front of you, that's Crib Goch.
Okay.
So that's where many people, you know, it's a ledge basically.
Yeah.
Many people have accidents there. Then Snowdon itself, it's the peak right in the far distance there. It's exactly like a triangle.
Oh, right, yeah.
So that's the peak of Snowdon.
Oh, okay. Right, the middle bit, yeah.
And
Okay,
can you
cool.
see just under, we call it the Lady of Snowdon. It's like a face in the side of the mountain. Maybe Lola can point you out, but it's between, can you see the castle?
Yeah.
Look slightly up to your left, you can see a wall,
Yeah.
and then you can see the hair and the nose and the mouth. Like a 50p coin.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the middle bit,
like
yeah.
a sign.
Cool.
So then this is the Norway Quarry Hospital. So it was built in around 1860. They had an earlier hospital in the quarry itself,
Okay. Yes.
but this was the purpose-built hospital. And it was actually, there was also a hospital at Penrhyn Quarry. They had the hospital first of all in Bangor and then in Bethesda as well.
Gosh.
And also there was a hospital in Blaenau Ffestiniog as well.
Yeah.
And obviously it's been built, an impressive building,
Yeah.
which you can see from Llanberris itself. You can take you up the steps.
Yeah, it's quite grand actually,
So
isn't
it's a museum run by Gwynedd Council, not by us, it's the National Museum. I think it's still closed at the moment, but I think they're hoping to reopen
That's
in August.
Because the business plan,
The 7th of August.
Yeah.
brilliant. Because
It's amazing inside.
one of the bigger ideas of this is to be able to link up other heritage organisations.
Yeah.
So that the heritage walkers will sit independently, so the museums don't have to fund it, but partnerships can fund it together. Because obviously museums have no money. So that's kind of.
You can see it's
Oh wow!
you can see the ward from the window. So the hospital, the quarrymen would pay shilling, a shilling from their wages. Seward Hospital, they'd say Welsh, so hospital shilling. So that would cover if they needed treatment in the hospital. So we say, if you compare it to people think about disasters such as in the coalfields, it wasn't the same on the same scale in terms of widespread disasters which injured and killed hundreds at the same time, but there were very, very many accidents which you might class it as a smaller accident, but what it meant, of course, if the quarryman couldn't work, he wouldn't be gaining any income, so no income for his family, so even missing a week or so, would be sort of quite devastating for the family.
Yeah.
So lots of injuries, obviously from rocks falling, the quarrymen themselves falling, breaking a bone in their leg and that kind of thing. Lots of accidents to the eye, as you can imagine, with falling debris.
Very cool, gory tools and stuff here for eyes.
They had their own operating table and everything.
There was an X-ray machine here in 1906.
Gosh, wow.
So you're seeing some kind of quite pioneering healthcare because of the needs, really.
Sorry if I'm incorrect, but something about anaesthesia?
Yeah, what do we...
So it was the only hospital in North Wales to have X-ray, and then one of the first with using ether as anaesthesia. Yeah. So it's between Pendon Quarry as well. I think Pendon Quarry used the ether, and then this quarry used the Lister antiseptic spray. It might be wrong, but it's one or
one or the other.
But both of them, as Laurie said, were pioneers and weren't primitive at all. They were on the cutting edge of healthcare and facilities.
And we happen to know, because there's a local historian who sort of specialises in, especially the history of quarry women, that a mastectomy was performed here in something like 1910. So her research suggests that it was someone who worked as some kind of matron or something here, but there was some really pioneering work happening here, and it's really remarkable.
And when they sort of, they had amputees and things, and there's records of the blacksmiths down in Gilgachlu where the museum is located, making iron limbs. So they could use a fork and raise their hats when they went to the chapel.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They've taken them down. I think it's on the other side. You can see the metal legs and the metal braces and stuff they would make.
And there's amazing carvings on these slate walls as well from inpatients.
Yeah.
That's probably some animal.
Yeah.
There's loads of them.
the other end as well, there's the deathos, the
mortuary.
Gosh, well, I suppose you'd need one, wouldn't you?
And you talk then about the irony of, you work on the rock face and the slate and you end up on the slate slab in the end.
So this one is a G. Rowlands Roberts, Bryn Bras, Llanberris, 1896.
This is supposed to be one of the quarry stewards, isn't it? It's like a caricature to take the mick out of and there's a horse somewhere as well.
And there's a sundial, isn't there? On the far side where the family are sitting, there's a sundial.
That's nice to look at as well.
So
the hospital was opened in 1892 here, wasn't it? It's a really good one of a horse. I think that's further down. Tell the
story and development of Llanberris itself, because Llanberris wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the quarry. The original village is Llanberris, where the church is. I'm not sure have you driven down from it's worth it. Did you drive in through all the
I got
traffic
the
lights?
bus in, public transport.
Yeah, but you can walk, you know, if it's of an evening,
Yeah.
walk up
Yeah.
the pass. It's not very far, and you can see the vastness of the Norway Quarry, and that's
Right.
where the original
okay.
village was, Llanberris. So Llanberris was developed because of the slate quarry and the need for houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see, you know, there's straight in front of us the church,
Yeah.
obviously, and that's, you know, can tell a bit about the history of, you know, church versus chapel.
Yeah.
So usually the quarry stewards would go to the Anglican church, while the quarry men would always go to the chapels,
Right.
the non-conformist.
Yeah.
And there's a language thing there as well, which you haven't mentioned, isn't it?
Yeah.
The stewards would speak English, the quarrymen would speak Welsh, chapels were Welsh speaking, churches were English speaking.
Ah, that's interesting as well. So yeah, hierarchy all over the place.
And
Again, the tourism, isn't it? Again, you can see obviously the leisure, how important the leisure industry nowadays is to the area.
And you can talk as well about kind of the architecture and the style in terms of, you know, this has been built up on the hill, visible from Llanberris. This is not a very practical location for the quarry, the Norway quarry. It's not close to the quarry at all. But this is really kind of
A statement,
This
yeah.
is a statement. And in the same way, the you know, quarry workshops, it's meant to be based on some kind of Indian colonial fort. You know, it's not a very practical workshop look from the outside, is it?
Yeah.
You know, it's got those decorative, I don't know what we call those features, but yeah. Again, it's a statement of confidence. It's a statement of look at us, look at kind of this industry and.
Definitely.
And again, as Laura mentioned earlier, just look at all the waste slates which has been used to create the walls and
And well, if we look at the enormous slate tip there as well, above the museum.
and some of them, but I can't see one here. You can tell the difference between a slab which has been on a saw table, because you can see the grooves of the blade.
And you've got the safety element thing as well of slate tips. They're a lot safer than coal tips. Because someone told me, I think it was Gareth Roberts, that with slate tips, as you build them up, they slip as you build them up and they reach an equilibrium. And I don't think there's ever been a story of a slate tip collapsing.
No, and
It's
also
not like
the water
gold.
is able to run
It can
through
go
the
through it.
gaps. Yeah, and you can see here's the perfect view of the Clwstwr workshops, the main quarry office just to the left, and then obviously Dolbadarn Castle straight behind, which is amazing, really, isn't it?
What amazing views. What absolutely amazing views.
I was trying to point out the Lady of Snow.
yeah. Just
See, get the gold off.
I think I've got it.
Don't need it.
Fi 'di gallu weld it unwaith? I've seen it once before.
So follow the ridge across, and you can see today in the middle of the ridge between those two peaks there. You can see like the kind of shadowy round bits. That's the hair. So imagine it's like the Queen on the stamp, but she's facing that way. So you've got the hair. If you can see that, then you can see the eye coming across, and then the nose and the chin. So Queen of
When you
Snowdon.
see it, don't you?
Yeah. You can see it framed really well from the office window.
Yeah, don't need to let
Yeah. And then the quarry office would have been really the only place where women would have worked, and that was even then only by the 40s, 50s.
Yeah, sort of 50s,
Yeah.
60s. Yeah.
Okay.
So very, very, very few women worked in the slate industry in any capacity.
And they used to bring the quarrymen's wages up from the port in Llanberris, port in Ordwig as it was called at the time, on a special train with guards guarding the wages, and they'd be paid monthly. And we have in the museum the circular patins which were made by the tinsmiths here. And then if it was a very, very good month in terms of wages, it would be called in Welsh mis envelope, which is envelope month, because the wages wouldn't fit into the tin. They'd have to have an envelope as well, again, like that.
And they'd have once a month as well the Diwrnod Cyfri Mawr,
Yeah.
so the big count day, that's when they'd count all the slates. But they were not paid for every slate that they made. So out of every 100, they were paid for 70 something.
It was a sort of, they'd count in threes, similar to shipping and fishing. The word is murro. So they would count 3 slates for one,
Gosh.
So just to account for breakages and transport and things.
Yeah.
And would they help each other as well with the wages, wouldn't they? If someone was paid less or didn't get
And
paid
also
enough.
maybe sort of towards the end of the month, say
Yeah.
if one bargain had sort of finished producing all the roofing slates they could, they would then help out on another bargain to help them produce more. So
Yeah, you've got that kind of sense of brotherhood and comradeship, haven't you, between them?
Took away of life, isn't it? The whole, like
Yeah.
everything about it.
Yeah.
then team got hit by
Lawr,
yeah. It's like a place to be nowadays, Llanberris.
I know. And the water, I will be in there later. Seriously. I did actually brought my costume. I thought, right,
Yeah.
just take it because you'll probably go in.
Well, you know, it's the hottest day of the year when my mum has actually said, I want to go to the beach to swim tomorrow. I would say she swims in the sea about once every 3 or 4 years. So this is a momentous day.
We went yesterday, it was like my 5-year-old, and she was just like, I can swim here.
Lovely.
Yeah,
There's loads of jellyfish though.
Is it?
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
quite small though, the ones in Aberdaron.
Yeah,
Or even help here.
yeah,
Would you get the purpose
I need a
Oh yeah, I think you can hold the fish on time.
Yeah, I've not tried it, but
No, I don't know. I don't think I would.
that's a sort of gamble I'm keen to
There were
take.
signs everywhere in Mensa. Well, just beware of the jellyfish.
Yeah, there's been sort of like jellyfish blooms and stuff recently.
Yeah.
I think it's a global warming thing.
Yeah.
And currents and stuff are changing. Yeah, so we go down to the bottom of the incline now because we can see just a little bit up to there.
Cool.
And we do run the incline sporadically because it does work, but obviously staffing and stuff. But say you wanted the projection of the moving incline, that is something you could film.
Okay.
Just be careful with your step.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
something cool there.
It's nice and cool here.
So just one bit on the walk up the hill where I live. It's like a path from the road and it's got trees above it. And you can tell on a hot day the sun never comes through those trees because it's always incredibly cold and humid. I might go and just stand on it.
Good idea.
So in terms of sort of length, do you keep that in mind, or
Yeah.
so you've just done 1 kilometre now, just to give you a
Right.
sense?
Brilliant. That's perfect.
So these two buildings are the old ambulance huts. And
Okay.
This is where they also kept the hearse as well.
Wow.
Before they took them.
This is a really good projection bit, actually. Just because it's probably always in shade, isn't it? Gives me a good idea of what archive footage to ask for, because I did contact the archive, but at the time
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know what to get.
and they've got so much brilliant photography. So we've got some, but
Yeah.
the main collection, as I said, is in Gwynedd Archives,
Yeah. So I'll be able to get that from them now.
because it makes it easier then for researchers. We
Yeah.
tend to collect the object.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't hold a large big of
And then the archive holds the paper and photographic archives. It's always been that way.
That sounds
Since the
good.
museum was
Yeah.
established, and just because of our storage. Because we're in the old building,
Yeah,
so it's
totally.
not sort of...
It'd be great if we can bring some of that out, like images of the hearse and stuff. That would be fab. Nice little bit.
where this path is often quite wet and quite difficult in winter.
Okay.
Fine in summer, but we've had some issues in winter
Yeah.
before.
Okay.
So you could, the other option is just, you'd miss the bottom of our incline. That way you could just back up on yourself on the tarmac road all the way down to our rear gates, where the cafe was. That's where the...
Okay.
Just because this just does get... But you obviously miss out on
Yeah. I think what we'll do is the proof of concept one, we'll do this walk. And then and hopefully when we get the funding, if we get the funding, when we can expand that then with alternatives for like weather and stuff like that, and ability levels and all that thing.
So this is the bottom of our
Gosh.
V2 incline. So as Laurie said, it's been restored obviously and is now powered by electricity. But as you can see, because of the steepness, these are the travellers, we call them. So that rather than the wagons sitting directly on the rail, they are on the travellers. So you'd have 2 loaded wagons coming down and 2 empty wagons going up on this one.
Yeah. Gosh.
And there used to be a bridge over the railway, and there's a picture of it here actually.
So that's the larger gauge, isn't it? You can see there's you can see like the window there. That's where the brakesman's hut was, and you can see a chimney. So he had a fire to keep him warm.
Not on a day like this.
This would have been a small cabin again, Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see just on this one. So that's the top of the V2.
Gosh,
We're
and
here
that
now.
goes, yeah.
And then, as Laurie says, there used to be a bridge covering.
And this is what I've learnt recently as well. You could slide the wagon onto this section, and then you could just pull that across to move it around here or move it across the bridge.
Total infrastructure.
Yeah. Then you can see the wagons would then be transported down to Portynnorwig to Felinheli. So the smaller narrow gauge wagons would fit on a traveller wagon. So so they would, then be taken all the way down.
Amazing.
I think it's often a common misconception that the slate from here went to Caernarfon. It didn't. The slate from Dyffryn went to Caernarfon. The slate from Dinorwig went to Portynnorwig, Felinheli, because it was closer.
Yeah. This is quite a nice photo where we started the bottom of the A1 incline. So can you see that's the A1 without all the growth. Yeah. It's Tyviant, you see. And then it carries on up. And this would be one of the C inclines on the Llanberris side. You can see the large slabs going down to a mill.
Wow. Cool. Great.
Then when we with the general public, we used to say, well, you can sort of wander around the lake or come back to the museum or whatever, but obviously the school